The rain started long before dawn. Water slipped through the holes in the rusted roof and landed inside old metal bowls Martha had arranged carefully around the room before going to bed. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoed through the tiny house like a clock counting down the hours of another difficult day. Martha opened her eyes slowly for a few seconds. She remained still beneath the thin blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her body felt heavy, as though exhaustion itself had climbed onto her chest during the night. Then she turned toward the corner of the room. Her 3 children were asleep on worn mattresses placed close together to stay warm. Daniel, the oldest, slept with one arm over his face. Ruth curled herself into a tiny ball beneath a faded blanket. Little Peter snored softly beside her. Martha stared at them quietly, and despite the leaking roof, despite the hunger, despite the endless struggles, she smiled, because as long as her children were safe, she could survive anything. Slowly, she sat up. Pain shot through her back immediately. Her hands were swollen from kneading dough the previous night, and her knees ached from walking miles every day selling bread. But there was no time to rest. Mothers like Martha did not have the luxury of resting. She wrapped a sweater around herself and walked carefully into the kitchen. Without waking the children, the kitchen was tiny. One crooked wooden table, a charcoal stove, 3 cracked cups, and shelves that were nearly empty. Martha opened a container of flour and stared silently at how little remained. "Please, be enough," she whispered. She lit the stove, coughing as smoke filled the room. As she mixed dough in an old metal bowl, her eyes drifted toward the family photograph hanging near the doorway. Samuel, her husband, even after 5 years. Seeing his smile still hurt. He had once been strong and full of life, always laughing loudly enough to fill the entire house with joy. He worked as a mechanic and dreamed of opening his own garage someday. But dreams did not survive sickness. By the time doctors discovered the disease, it was already too late. The treatments consumed their savings, the debt swallowed the rest, and when Samuel died, Martha inherited not only grief, but poverty too. Neighbors had whispered during the funeral, "How will she survive alone? She has 3 children. She should send them to relatives. A woman alone cannot raise a family." Martha remembered every word, and every single day since then. She had fought to prove them wrong. The bread baked slowly while thunder rolled outside. By sunrise, Martha balanced a basket of bread on her head and stepped into the muddy streets. Fresh bread, she called softly. The morning air was cold, but sweat already formed on her forehead as she walked from street to street. Some people ignored her completely, others bought quickly without even looking at her face. A few mocked her openly. One wealthy woman examined the bread with disgust. "You still sell these?" she scoffed. Martha forced a smile. "They're fresh this morning." The woman rolled her eyes. "Poor people always say that." Then she walked away laughing with her friend. Martha lowered her gaze. Quietly, humiliation had become part of her daily life. Still, she continued walking, because humiliation did not matter when children needed food. Hours passed beneath the burning sun. Her feet throbbed inside worn sandals held together by thread. By afternoon, only 4 pieces of bread remained. Martha sat beneath a tree for a moment to rest her aching legs. Nearby, 2 women whispered while staring at her. "That's Samuel's widow. She still struggles." "Yes, I heard her son may stop school soon because of FEs. What a shame." Martha pretended not to hear them, but deep inside, their words cut her heart, not because she cared about gossip, but because she feared they might be right. When she finally returned home late that evening, the house was noisy. Peter was crying loudly. Ruth tried calming him while stirring a pot of soup on the stove. Daniel sat in the corner doing homework with frustration written all over his face. "Mama." Ruth ran toward her. "Teacher says I need new shoes." Martha looked down. Immediately, the sole of Ruth's shoe had nearly fallen off. Completely, her chest tightened. Painfully, "We'll buy new ones soon," she said, softly. Daniel suddenly slammed his book shut. "Soon? You always say soon." The room became silent. Martha stared at him quietly. Daniel stood up angrily. I'm tired of this life. Daniel, no. Everyone laughs at us at school. They laugh at you. Ruth looked frightened. Peter stopped crying instantly. But Daniel continued, they say my mother smells like smoke and bread. They say we look like beggars. Martha's face fell slightly. Still, she remained calm. I'm trying my best. Well, your best isn't enough. The words struck harder than any slap. For a moment, Martha could not breathe, but she swallowed the pain quietly. Because mothers often suffer silently, Daniel grabbed his bag angrily. Other kids have normal lives. Why can't we? Then he stormed outside, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. Peter began crying again. Ruth looked at her mother nervously, but Martha simply stood there staring at the closed door. Then slowly, she sat down, and tears finally filled her eyes, not because she was tired, not because she was hungry, but because the child she loved most no longer understood her sacrifices. That night, after the children fell asleep, Martha sat beneath candlelight sewing Ruth's torn shoes carefully by hand. Her fingers trembled from exhaustion. Still, stitch after stitch, she repaired them. When she finished, she walked quietly toward Daniel's mattress. Even in sleep, his face still looked like the little boy who once clung to her during thunderstorms. She pulled his blanket higher over his shoulders. I know life feels unfair, she whispered softly, but one day you'll understand. Daniel stirred slightly but did not wake up. The next morning began exactly the same. Before sunrise, Martha was already working. Day after day blurred together. Wake up, bake bread, sell bread, wash clothes for wealthy families, clean houses, cook dinner, pray, sleep for a few hours, then begin again. Some nights she fell asleep sitting upright because her body could no longer stay awake. Still, she never complained. One evening, Ruth noticed Martha coughing badly into a cloth. Mama, are you sick? Martha quickly hid the cloth. No, my child. Just tired, but the coughing continued. Weeks passed. School fees became overdue. Landlords began asking questions. Food portions became smaller. Sometimes Martha secretly skipped meals so the children could eat. I already ate earlier, she would lie. Meanwhile, she drank water to silence the hunger twisting inside her stomach. One afternoon, Daniel returned home furious. They sent me out of class again. Martha looked up from washing clothes. Because of fees? Daniel nodded angrily. I'm tired of being embarrassed every day. Martha reached into her pocket slowly and removed a few crumpled bills. This is all I made today. Daniel stared at the money. It wasn't enough. Not even close. He looked away. Bitterly, you work all day and we still have nothing. The disappointment in his voice broke Martha's heart more than anger ever could. That night, after the children slept, Martha knelt beside her bed and prayed quietly. God, I don't ask for riches. I only ask for strength. Please don't let my children suffer because of me. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she prayed, but by morning, she still woke before dawn, still worked, still smiled, because mothers do not stop loving simply because life becomes cruel. Then came the day everything changed. The school principal arrived at their house unexpectedly. Martha's heart raced immediately. What happened? The principal looked serious. Daniel collapsed during class. The words hit like lightning. Martha ran barefoot through the streets because one sandal broke. Before she reached the clinic, when she arrived, Daniel lay weakly on a hospital bed connected to machines she did not understand. Fear consumed her instantly. Daniel. He opened his eyes weakly. Mama. A doctor approached carefully. He needs surgery immediately. Martha's hands shook. Surgery? There's a condition affecting his heart. Without treatment, it could become fatal. Her knees nearly gave out. How much will it cost? The doctor named the amount. The world around her seemed to stop. It was impossible. Completely impossible. There must be another way, she whispered desperately. I'm Sorry, the doctor replied softly. That night, Martha sat alone outside the hospital staring into darkness. Rain poured heavily around her. Slowly, she reached into her pocket and removed her wedding ring. The final memory of Samuel. She stared at it for a long time. Memories flooded her mind. Their wedding day, Samuel promising to protect her forever. The birth of their children, the laughter they once shared before. Sickness destroyed everything. Now all those memories fit into one small ring. Tears streamed down her face. Forgive me, she whispered. The next morning, she sold it, but even after selling the ring, the money was still not enough. So Martha did something nobody expected. She secretly accepted a night job cleaning the hospital floors after spending entire days selling bread and washing clothes. She worked nearly 20 hours every day. No rest. No sleep. Only sacrifice. Her cough worsened badly. Sometimes blood stained the cloth she hid in her pocket, but she ignored it because Daniel needed surgery. Nothing else mattered. Late one night, Daniel woke unexpectedly after surgery preparations and saw a cleaner slowly mopping the hallway. At first, he barely recognized her. Mama? Martha froze. The mop slipped slightly from her tired hands. Daniel stared in disbelief. You work here too? She forced a weak smile. It's temporary. He looked at her carefully, really carefully. For the first time in years, he noticed the deep exhaustion beneath her eyes, the swollen fingers, the trembling hands, the cracked skin, the cough she kept hiding, and suddenly guilt flooded his chest. Mama, have you been doing all this alone? Martha avoided his eyes. As long as you survive, nothing else matters. Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. All those years, he had focused only on his own embarrassment. He never saw her suffering, never understood how deeply she sacrificed herself for them. And now it was too late to take back his cruel words. The surgery finally happened 3 days later. Doctors called it successful. Daniel would live. For the first time in months, hope entered the family again. Neighbors visited, church members prayed, even people who once ignored Martha suddenly praised her strength. But Martha herself looked weaker each day. Her face became pale, her breathing slower. Still, she smiled whenever her children smiled. One evening, Ruth hugged her tightly. Mama, when Daniel gets better, can we all go somewhere nice together someday? Martha smiled softly. Yes, my love. Promise? I promise. But deep inside, Martha already knew her body was failing. That night, she worked another cleaning shift at the hospital. Her legs shook with every step. The hallway lights blurred before her eyes. Still, she continued pushing the mop slowly across the floor, because stopping meant thinking about the pain, and Martha had trained herself not to think about pain. Near midnight, she sat down in a chair to rest for just a moment. Just a moment. She closed her eyes quietly, and never opened them again. Morning arrived. Nurses discovered her first. Daniel heard commotion in the hallway and walked out slowly. Then he saw her. Still. Silent. Gone. At first, his mind refused to understand. Mama? No response. Fear consumed him instantly. Mama? He rushed toward her, grabbing her cold hands desperately. No, no, please wake up. Doctors and nurses surrounded him quietly, but nothing could be done. Her exhausted body had finally surrendered. Daniel collapsed to his knees crying uncontrollably. Ruth screamed when she arrived. Little Peter clung to Martha's arm, begging her to wake up. The entire hallway filled with heartbreak. Later, a nurse handed Daniel Martha's bag. Inside, he found a folded letter. His hands trembled as he opened it. To my children, if you are reading this, then God has called me home. Please do not cry to long for me. Everything I suffered was worth it because of you. Daniel, never blame yourself for the words you once said. A mother's heart does not keep records of pain. Ruth, keep your beautiful smile even when life becomes difficult. Peter, grow into a kind man who protects others. And always remember this. The greatest love is often silent. Sometimes love looks like sacrifice. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like a mother pretending she is not hungry so her children can eat. But real love never asks for recognition. If my children can smile, then my life was worth it. I will always love you, Mama. By the time Daniel finished reading, he could barely breathe through his tears, and for the first time in his life, he truly understood who his mother had been. Not poor, not weak, not embarrassing, but extraordinary. Years passed. Daniel studied harder than ever before. Every painful memory became fuel pushing him forward. Eventually, he graduated medical school and became one of the most respected doctors in the city. But the most important thing inside his office was not his degree, not his awards, not the expensive furniture. It was a framed photograph hanging behind his desk, a picture of Martha wearing her faded dress and tired smile. Underneath the frame were the words, "The woman who gave everything and asked for nothing." And every time a struggling mother entered his office unable to pay for treatment, Daniel helped her for free, because every exhausted face reminded him of Martha. Every sacrifice reminded him of her silent love, and somewhere beyond life itself, a mother's love continued living through the children she sacrificed everything for.